We've had a busy morning this morning, and we've been following the Chamberson grapes that came from C&H Vineyard and Gardens, and here we are at Sabatia Winery, and joining me is Steve Sneed. Steve, you've had a busy morning. Tell me a little bit what we did with those grapes when they came off the trailer.
Yeah, the first thing we do is we unload the grapes. We get them here as quickly as we can. We want them to go as quickly as possible from vine to juice and protected and ready to start the fermentation. So first thing we do is we take them off the trailer. We weigh them on a scale, and then we'll take the grapes around and shovel them into what's called a crusher destemmer.
Okay, and that sounds like a violent thing.
It is a very violent thing, yes. Yeah, you want to keep your hands completely out of the way.
Yeah.
But there's augers involved and paddles inside the machine that tumble the grapes. And then there's a basket that surrounds that process. And the basket has holes in it that allow the grapes, the juice, the skins, the seeds to fall out. The stems get ejected out the end. And those stems fall into a little tub. And then we dump that tub and take that eventually to a compost pile. And that compost will be turned back into our own vineyard over the next winter. The juice and the pulp, everything else gets pumped into a harvest bin, another harvest bin that we use to do open top fermentation.
Okay, and this is red wine that we're making.
This is red wine
correct?
Today, right.
So those skins are an important part in that red wine making.
Absolutely, yeah. In red wines, most of the color comes from the skins and that contact during fermentation. White wines, we separate them immediately, so the juice is separated from those skins, and we really don't want too much color in that. And so they're done a little different process. With the reds, the Chamberson that we did today, it will ferment. It will take about 5 days to do the fermentation. And when that's done, then we will put it into a press, separate the juice and the skins.
Okay. Let's back up to the fermentation process a little bit. It's not just a matter of putting juice in a container and letting it do its thing. You've done a little bit of chemistry. Tell me about some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking for very specific chemistry when the crop comes in. It's it's an agricultural crop and it's maturing over time. There are several key factors that we look at. We look at, first of all, sugar level, and we look at it as a certain percentage of sugar. And we're really looking for 22 to 24 range on this particular grape. We got really close to that today. We're also looking at pH and total acidity. Now the difference there, pH is the strength of the acid that's in the juice, and total acidity is, think of that as the volume of acid that's in the juice. And as the grapes mature, that sugar level goes up, the pH starts to go up. In other words, it's a weaker acid. If you remember your chemistry days,
yeah.
as the pH number climbs, that's a weaker acid. So if you take it too far, you're in trouble.
Okay.
And then the total acidity as that grape matures drops.
Okay.
So think of the berry getting larger, and the concentration inside of that acid is less.
Okay. And we're trying to create an environment for yeast to grow. I mean, it's like beer we've seen, right? So.
Exactly. And in our case, what we try to do, well, first of all, grapes have yeast on the outside of the skins.
Okay.
It's there naturally. Winemaking's been around for 8,000 years. It's really only in the last 50 or 60 years that we've really perfected commercial yeasts. They're a lot more predictable. So what we'll do is we'll kill off the native yeast, and then the next day or two we'll dose it with a commercial yeast. It's a lot more predictable, both in temperature range, flavors, aromas, those sorts of things.
Okay, so the yeast is what's eating those sugars, or the brick, right? And so it's taking it down.
Exactly.
A sweetness.
Exactly. The yeast eats the sugar.
Okay.
And that converts into two things: so CO2, carbon dioxide, and ethyl alcohol. So the alcohol is what stabilizes this product. So that's the magic of grapes and turning into wine. Is the whole purpose of wine is to preserve that crop. Without it, without some sort of chemicals in there to protect the juice, it would spoil very quickly.
Right.
So we're making a product that can last for years and years simply by converting it to alcohol.
Okay. So how long does that fermentation for the red wine that you're making today actually take?
It'll be about 5 days on this.
And is it an exothermic reaction? Does it heat up or anything? Like, can you tell
Most
us a little bit
definitely.
what does it change as far
Absolutely.
as the look?
It is a violent reaction that's happening inside. In fact, in another day or two, when the commercial yeast takes over and the fermentation really kicks off, it's almost like boiling underneath.
Oh, wow.
And it will push the skins and the pulp to the top, and it forms a cap, about this big. And about 3 times a day, I will break up that cap. I've got a special tool to help me break that up, and it helps to release heat, and it also helps to push flavors back into the wine. So those skins and seeds and everything else, the tannins are picked up in that wine. It's a wonderful process. It's one of my favorite parts of the whole process, is to just come out and break up that cap.
Okay. And so a little bit of difference between the white and the red. The reds aren't, or the whites won't be sitting with their skins. They
Nope.
will go straight into a fermentation process?
They go into, we separate the skins and the seeds, so the juice settles out for about 2 days. And so some of the sediment goes down to the bottom, and we'll leave that in a tank and remove everything else, put that into another tank that's got a glycol jacket on the outside of it. And we do a colder fermentation. We control that fermentation. In this case, it's about 58 to 60 degrees that I ferment this particular wine. And this wine we did about 4 weeks ago. And it's a much slower process because of the lower temperature. The lower temperatures in whites and even rosés, it hangs on to the floral aromas, any of the fruity aromas. If you go too hot on those fermentations, it kind of blows all those things away. Oh, okay. And then you're just left with alcohol with no flavor or aromas to it. Okay. So it is a totally different process. Okay. With reds, it's fine to be in that 80 to 85 degree range. It actually kind of benefits to bring out some of those flavors.
Excellent. All right, so once our red wine is done fermenting, what is the next step? It goes into a barrel?
Not yet. It'll go into a big tank and settle out for a couple of weeks. And again, solids will settle out down the bottom. And then I'll make a determination 2 or 3 weeks. And then it will go to barrel. Okay. And then it will stay in barrel typically about a year and a half sometimes. And every month, you will have to go in and top up the barrel. Even in the barrels, the wine will evaporate a little bit through the wood.
Okay, it's porous, right?
It's a little bit porous, yeah, just microscopically small amounts. And so you'll see the level of the wine go down. That's referred to as the angel share. Oh. And so we have to top that up. You can't allow oxygen to be in there. That would spoil the wine. Okay. So every 2 to 3 weeks, and eventually a month, I will go in and top those barrels back up. I'll also check the chemistry every single month.
Okay. And so how long will they sit in these barrels for?
12 to 18 months total. Okay. And then they'll come out of barrel. I'll blend them together. I'll have multiple vineyards, multiple harvests that will be in these barrels. So I'll have a blend that will come back together. It's the same variety of grape. And they'll go into another tank. I'll make sure they're stable. Again, more solids will settle out, and eventually they're bottled. Okay.
Well, tell us a little bit about, Sabatia is buying grapes from Oklahoma. Tell us a little bit about how important that is and why that's unique.
Yeah, well, I think it's vitally important to buy local. And from a winery doing fresh grapes, you really need those grapes to get from vine to processing as quick as possible to get the best quality. There are some fantastic growers in Oklahoma. We'd love to see more. The growers we have here are excellent. So we have wonderful grapes that come in. I also like the concept of being a 100% Oklahoma grown winery. And it's my job not to mess anything up after these families work so hard on the grapes all summer long. And so they're delivering wonderful fruit. I need to make quality wine when it comes out.
Right. Well, I love your name too, Sabatia. Tell us a little bit about how you came up with your label and your name as well.
Yeah, well, we bought this property in 2010, and it was undeveloped and a lot of grassland here. Every weed known to man. So basically that means we have a lot of wildflowers. There's about 12, 15 different wildflowers that we have here. But the one that was really unique to me was Sabatia campestre. That's the botanical name for this particular flower. It's about 6 to 8 inches tall on the stem, and then this really pretty pink flower on top. So in mid-June, through a little, somewhere around 4th of July, it's all over my property. And so I like names that tie to a place, and it ties to Oklahoma. That's a native to the prairie grasslands of Oklahoma and Kansas. Right. And it's a unique little flower, but yet it is Oklahoma through and through. So I'm happy to have that name. And fortunately, there were no wineries anywhere in the world called Sabatia. And no, there are no flowers in the wine.
Okay, okay. Well, Steve, thank you so much for sharing the story of Sabatia and also this process of winemaking with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thanks. We hope you enjoyed this video as part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on the OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.